Hello everybody and welcome to another Drowned City spoiler roundup here at Playing Board Games with me and Eric. We're going to talk about some cards that have been recently spoiled, but not the most recently spoiled, because we're recording this on December 2nd and there's going to be a spoiler coming out tomorrow. But it just means we're in spoiler season, so there's going to be more of these videos in the future. So we're going to do this first one here, talking about a few cards. I actually also haven't talked about these on the channel, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to discuss your things. I'll kind of like add on to your things, but then I'm also going to give my own opinions on these cards for the first time as well. So
you hear that, Bryn? I'm coming for you.
Yeah, watch your back, Bryn. All right. First up, we got Hunter's Mark. This is a 1 cost, 1 experience guardian event that commits for a wild. It's a spell, fast, attached to an enemy or location, limit 1 per enemy. Investigators get +1 fist while fighting this enemy. As a reaction, when damage is dealt to attached enemy, discard Hunter's Mark, deal 1 additional damage to that enemy. Any investigator may trigger this ability.
This is an incredible card. This is incredible. It commits for a wild symbol. It's a 1 cost event. Mm-hmm. It's fast. It attaches to 1 enemy, which is great. There's no elite, non-elite ruling on it.
Yep.
Investigators get +1 fighting, so that's just going to make it better when you're dealing with a major enemy. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that anyone can discard it to deal 1 additional damage clears up all sorts of conditions like we've been dealing with in our recent run. Mm-hmm. It is any investigator.
Yep.
This is solid. I really like this.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. This card seems crazy. One thing I like to do whenever I see a card that deals damage, I'd like to think of how would the clue equivalent match with it. If there was a card that just said fast, attached to your location, you get +1 book while investigating this location, and then, you know, when you discover a clue, discard this, discover additional clue, that card would be insanely played. The top half of this, of just getting +1 fist while fighting, is still played to this day in Seeker with Magnifying Glass, which just gives you +1 book while investigating. This is, while I think less ubiquitous than Magnifying Glass, I think that this card is going to see play in an insanely large number of decks going forward.
This is like a super flexible Vicious Blow.
It is, yes. It's a recurring Vicious Blow that you get the damage out of it once, but you get so much value out of it until that moment comes.
Yeah, and I'm gonna want to run this on any scenario that I can think of where I know I'm gonna have to fight an elite enemy.
Yes. Because
the lack of things that target elite enemies is pretty strong. Mm-hmm. And this thing ignoring that is so good.
Yes. It's one of those things, too, where in the past, like, there was a card that came out in Scarlet Keys, that's called Map the Area, where you attach your location and everyone gets -1 difficulty. Cards that, we underrated that, and then cards that turn out that benefit everyone, they go up in value because of that. Yeah. And this benefits everyone. While it might not benefit in the sense of, like, a 2-player, because you as the fighter are designed to fight, you might not need this as much. If you're going to 3 or 4 player, I think this card is going to really shine at those player counts.
One thing I will say, too, though, is that as a fast action, honestly, even if you are a 2-player game and you're fighting a really strong enemy, this is going to give you +1 for your first 2 attacks on your attack, and then in your 3rd attack, when you need to deal that 1 extra damage to possibly clear the monster completely, you're going to get +1 attack again, and you're going to deal 1 damage. So this card can effectively be a +3 fist,
spread out,
+1 damage.
Yeah.
In a single round with no action cost.
Yes, and that's very good.
That's wild.
That's very good. I think this is a card that if anyone plays it, I'm never going to be like, why are you playing this? Or is this the right fit for playing this?
Unless you play it in a flex who does no damage.
Yes, unless you play it in someone who doesn't fight. Then it's a little bit of an issue. But even as a support, like, if you're like a Carolyn Fern support deck, you could just bring this, put it on the enemy and be like, go nuts.
Yeah.
You know? Or like Carson Sinclair, he could run this as well. I'm very excited. There's the Investigator Marion, where when you play an event, you may play another event, like any fast card. So like, there's a joke that people always say where it's like someone looking at an event and being like, this looks good in Marion. But it's true. Every event is good in Marion, and if it's fast, it's even better.
That's wild. Yeah, that's so strong.
Yeah. All right, next one we got here. You're going to love this one because there's a little creature involved with it. So this is the great work. Divide and Unite. This is a level 0 Mystic card. It's a pact and it's a science. It's permanent. Limit 1 per deck. Purchase only at deck creation. You earn 1 additional experience after each scenario of this campaign. If you are defeated, you are usurped by the Homunculus. Replace each signature card in your deck with a random basic weakness. Flip this card and replace your investigator with it for the remainder of the campaign.
Oh, wait. All of your signature cards become a weakness.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so that sucks a little bit.
Yes. Lost Homunculus, the Forgotten Child, is a 2s across the board. It's a construct and a scion, soaks for 6 and 6. 6 and 6 cannot be chosen as a starting investigator. You cannot add, remove, or upgrade cards from your deck. You get +2 skill value while resolving effects on spell cards. And when you are defeated, you are killed. Eldritch End effect +0, draw 1 card.
This is so bad. This is so bad, and I'm 100% going to run it. This is so bad. This is such a bad card. I think it's really cute. I think it's really cute. I think it's a really cute idea. I think choosing to put the stats at 2s, even with the +2 skill value on spell cards, makes this terrible. I don't think I will say right now, I cannot see this being playable. I don't know enough about Mystics to know for certain.
Yeah.
But I cannot see this character as being playable, and I'm 100% going to play it.
So, Mystic's identity is kind of experience boosting cards.
Yeah.
They have Arcane Research, which allows you to reduce the cost of a spell you upgrade by 1, but you take 1 mental trauma at the start of the game.
Yeah.
It is Down the Rabbit Hole, where you get to reduce the cost of the first 2 cards you upgrade by 1. And this is just like the next line of these Mystic experience boosting cards. The question, like, to go with the thing is that this is bad, we have to ask a question that comes with that, which is, if you are earning 1,000,000 experience, can you actually die? Right? Like, that's the thing that comes with it, right?
Totally.
And, like, that's kind of the thing that a lot of people online have said about this card, is that it's a shame that it exists because Mystics already have so many ways to cheat on XP.
Yeah.
To that, I have 2 things to say. 1, this might be someone's first box. This might be the only way they have to cheat on XP.
Yeah.
Number 2, if you really crunch the numbers, is this actually worth it? Right? That's the other question. So I'm kind of with you that I'm not going to go out and say that I think this card is bad. I think this card is playable in the right decks. But I do think that people see XP boosting and they are overvaluing what this brings in the long term. So if we get into the crunchy numbers, you get 2 Arcane Researches. You have now saved on 14 experience. Down the Rabbit Hole, 1 card. If you do not add any additional cards at the penalty, you have saved on 14 experience. This 1 card gives you 7 additional experience. Now, yes, going back to my first point, you might never die, right? Because if you get that many experience. But at the same time, is 7 experience worth it in the end? And to me, if I want to get super crunchy and optimal with my deck building, the answer in most cases is no.
Well, you could also add this to one of those other cards, right?
Yes, so you could do it in addition, right?
Yeah.
So then your 14 becomes 21, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's where things like, where people talk about, like, they get, like, a little bit, like, for it. But even then, on that point, I'd rather have 28 than 35.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to me, there's not much of a big difference between 28 and 35. Like, 28's, well, so it's not actually 28, so, because you only get it for 7 experience. No, it is. It's 7. You get 7 out of it. So, like, that's kind of the thing. Like, the idea is, you stack it, and people are like, another Mystic experience booster, but...
Here's my counterpoint to that. This is assuming that everything goes well. If things go badly, even if you've gained all that extra experience, can you bring this thing into a scenario, especially a later scenario, after you've probably been defeated, and not lose another scenario with these stats, with these rules, with these systems?
Yeah.
It might have been better to just have your character die and start a new character that could do things, because that 2 across the board, with no adding, removing, or upgrading cards, and the Elder Sign of +0, draw 1 card, is terrible.
Yeah.
You are, unless you are doing solo play, in which case you're only hurting yourself, taking this card, if the Lost Homunculus triggers, you are hurting your ability to win the next scenario.
And I think you're 100% right, too. There's a rogue card called Sharon's Obol that gives you 2 additional experience each scenario. But if you die, you're eliminated, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are going to play this like that and then complain about the card when really the kind of like comes to them being like, why are you playing this card if you're not playing like the other half of the card, which is where the balance of the design is, right?
Exactly.
To me, if I'm playing the Homunculus, it's a spell-heavy Mystic deck, and if I become the Homunculus, I'm like, let's see if I can do this.
Exactly.
You know? Right?
If I'm playing Lost Homunculus, if I'm playing the Great Work, what I'm actually playing is Lost Homunculus.
Yeah.
And in my mind, what I'm doing is I'm going to give myself a challenge run where I'm trying to build a deck, getting as much experience as I can, so that this becomes playable.
Yes, and like I think that is like the fun part of it, and I think that like I think I'm with you that I think this card is less good than people generally have said online.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is still playable, and I think that, yes, we can look at the problem of Mystic experience cards as a whole and kind of like maybe like, is this an issue? But I think the Great Work is not adding to that issue in the way the previous ones were. I think this is the one that actually seems the most fair and not just like an auto-include.
And I am 100% looking at that. You get +2 skill value while resolving abilities on spell cards, and I'm building around that.
Yes,
even
agreed.
if it's not in my previous character.
Because I think the other ones are very easy to take advantage of. Like Arcane Research is still very Mystic because you have to use spells, but like down the rabbit hole is kind of problematic. But I think that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I knew you would love the card because
I love this card, and I'm so sad that if it was 3s across the board with that +2, I'd be like infinitely playable. This is my new character. This is my Yithian.
No, yeah.
But
I think they did a good job balancing the card out.
2s across the board just feel bad.
Yeah. All right, next one we got here is Mob Connections. This is a 1-cost, 2 experience rogue card. It's a connection and illicit. It's exceptional, which means it costs 4 experience to put into your deck, but it's still level 2. As an action, spend 2 resources, draw the card attached to Mob Connections. As a reaction, when an illicit asset you control is discarded from play, exhaust Mob Connections, attach that asset to this card face down, limit 1 attached asset.
Okay, hold up.
So Rogue is also, for you read, Rogue is also Eric's probably least experienced class because you've only played it with Dexter, and mostly I'm playing Rogues when Eric and I play together, so there's a little bit of like Rogue knowledge I think that comes with this.
This seems really good. This seems really strong, actually. I really like this card. I think that this is a very interesting opposite of a lot of cards you've been telling me about, which is weapon draw or other kinds of draw. I really like that this saves things. So I think it's potentially strong. I potentially see this as a very powerful fixer in a deck that wants to burn out an asset using all of its illicit resources or whatever it has, and then catch it again.
Yeah, so this card, I'm curious to see how this card goes in the long term. Because it's missing like a piece to like be like, aha, that's what you do with it. There is a cool ally in the rogue class called Joey the Rat. His upgraded version allows you to, as a lightning bolt, spend a resource to play a card from your hand, paying its cost. But you can also spend, as a lightning bolt, discard an item asset you control to gain 2 resources. So you could use that to discard the item asset, get the money to pay for it, draw it, and then potentially play it normally or play it fast. The issue with Mob Connections is that it feels like a card you're kind of building around.
Yeah.
But it's a one-of that you need to find.
Oh, that's an excellent point.
It's not as transformative. There's another rogue card that's kind of similar called Sharpshooter, where it lets you shoot with your foot or shoot against the enemy's foot. And it's a cool card, but it's not played because it's transformative to your deck. But if you don't find it, you're looking at the rest of your deck being like, what am I doing? Right?
What have I done?
Yeah. With Mob Connections, I don't think it has the same issue. This is just like extra value on top of your stuff.
Yeah, I think I can see it being more played than that, and I wouldn't necessarily even build my deck around it unless, like, if I'm basically, I look at this and I go, if I'm already building an illicit deck, like, how many illicit cards do I need before this becomes valuable?
Yes, I think that's a great way of approaching it. Because to me, like, also, like, if I was doing a Joey the Rat, because I would put this card into a late game rogue deck that's playing Joey the Rat, to discard my Thieves Kit to just loot that indefinitely.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think, like, especially, like, in Winifred, Habamuck, who has insane card draw, who I'm pretty sure I played with you.
I think so.
And I think it was Min and Winifred in Dream Raiders, yes.
Winifred,
yes. Like, in there, when you can find it, I think, like, I think there's homes for it. I think we're just missing, like, that thing that makes spikes go yes.
Yeah.
Right? But I think there's a lot of cool, like, potential with this card.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much to say because, again, it's missing those pieces. But it's... I think it's cool, and I really want to play with Joey the Rat.
It's a very complicated way to draw a card out of your discard.
Yes,
the way I see
it is. It's just complicated recursion.
Yeah.
Which is good, because recursion should be kind of complicated.
Yeah.
All right, next card here, we got Lawrence Carlisle. This is a 3-cost survivor ally. He's sculpting his dreams. He's an ally artist patron, soaks for 1/1. You get +1 book.
Interesting.
And then as a reaction, after you discard 1 or more cards from your hand during your turn, exhaust Lawrence Carlisle, gain 1 resource. Yeah?
I've decided I don't like him.
Why don't you like him?
I can see him in a lot of decks, and I understand that there's a lot of decks that are going to discard cards and everything and are going to benefit from this and everything. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But he's red. He adds 1 book for 3 cost. He only soaks for 1/1. And after you discard 1 or more cards from your hand, you exhaust him and gain 1 resource. So, like... I need 3 rounds to pay him back for his cost, and that's 3 rounds of discarding cards. I'm gaining 1 book, which is fine, but he's very killable. He's taking up an ally slot. I don't think I like him. Like, again, I am sure that there are decks that are playing some sort of cool discard effect to be able to get a benefit off of this guy.
Yeah.
But I look at this and I go, this is a lot of upfront cost for meh.
So, this guy's very interesting because before this at level 0, 1 book, 1 fist always costed 4.
Yeah.
So this guy is actually infinitely cheaper. You know, it's not infinite because it's only 1, but it is actually infinite. Which is funny to the statement where, like, I need 3 turns for this guy to pay him back. The reality is this guy actually pays for himself before you even play it, if you look at just, like, the number side of things. Right?
Fair.
Just for, like, the book. Like, just, like, the math of how, like, the game's numbers are. However, I do agree. Okay, I'll say my first opinion before I get to adding on to yours. I think this card is insanely good. I would play him in a deck at level 0, even if I'm not discarding cards from my hand. If I was a survivor that was investigating. The reason for this is that a lot of times when you're playing a survivor that's using their book, you will often try to get into an ally that has book, or you'll eventually upgrade into Granny Orn. The level 0 Granny Orn only gives you brain, and that is poo-poo caca. I want that book. So I would actually put this guy in my decks to get to upgraded Granny Orn.
Okay.
However, with your point, I do think that if we're looking at from the pure optimal want to win, if you're not using him for his bottom ability, why are you leaving so much on the table? Is kind of like what it comes down to, right? Because his ability is actually like discarding cards. Generally, when you're discarding cards during your turn, you're doing it as a positive value in Survivor. So you're actually getting value on top of your value, right? And that's where Lawrence Carlisle is really good. So I agree with you in the sense that, like, while I think that I will play this card a lot, I will play it a lot because I'm boring. And if I'm investigating, my book being high will win me the game more.
That's right. Fair.
But if I'm looking at, like, where this guy will truly sing, it is in a deck where you're using his ability every turn, so you can double back the resources easily, right? Yeah. Like in Ash Campete, where you can discard cards from your hand to
That's exactly what I was thinking of. I was like, you're going to put him in there.
Wendy Adams, right? Where she can discard a card to redraw a token.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
Even the auto fail, so she can, like, redraw anything.
Oh, right? That's pretty sick.
So, like, getting the value out of it. Patrice, she uses a card cost Cornered to get +2 to skill tests, right?
Oh, nice.
The next investigator we're about to talk about might also synergize with it. But I do agree with you. Well, I don't agree that he's, like, bad, but even you said, like, the book is still good. I think that, like, for just book and Survivor is very good. And even though Survivors usually reduce Shroud as opposed to beat Shroud, eventually you're going to want to not do that. And investigating 4-1 versus 3-1 is a lot more reliable.
Huge. That's huge.
Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah.
And I hear everything you're saying, and I think you're absolutely right. He just doesn't excite me.
And that's because he's a spike card. Like this, he is. Like this card is. It's really funny when he was shared in the Discord. There was all this discussion, and me, and then another player who was a known spike. I just said, "Oh, he's gonna see play." And then the other person said, "This is amazing," right? Like everyone else is just like talking about like the complexities of the card, but the value, the thing about this card is that he gives you +1 book for 3, and we've never had that at this rate before at level 0.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
Yeah. At least in Survivor. All right. Last card we're here to talk about is the Survivor Investigator that's going to synergize with this. George Barnaby, the lawyer, is finally here, and he has a lot of text, so let's get ready. He is a 2-4-3-3, but he's really a 2-5-3-3 with Robert Carlisle in play. Your max hand size is equal to the number of face-down cards beneath George Barnaby to a limit of 5 cards. You may commit face-down cards beneath George Barnaby to skill tests as if they were in your hand. As a reaction, after you discard a card from your hand, you place it face-down beneath George Barnaby, then draw 1 card, limit once per phase.
Okay, so your max hand size is equal to the number of face-down cards beneath George Barnaby, limit 5. Okay. You may commit face-down cards to skill tests as if they were in your hand. So you're a natural recursion.
Yes.
And this is where you get the discard, place it face down, and then draw 1 card.
So you're not actually losing cards.
Yeah. How does he interact with your opening hand?
We'll get to that. A lot of people were wanting this because we saw his front side, but we didn't see his back side for a while.
Yeah.
Deck size 35, so a bigger deck to make up because he has some built-in draw.
Yeah.
He gets Survivor 0-5, Neutral 0-5, up to 10 other level 0 Seeker and/or Rogue cards. He has 3 copies of Grim Resolve, which we'll get to, 1 Cast Adrift, and 1 RBW, as always. His additional setup, after drawing your opening hand, you may place any number of your cards in your hand face down beneath George Barnaby.
Okay, I have some opinions, but I'd like to read his...
Grim Resolves, you get 3 copies of this. It's a wild, innate developed. After the skill test resolves, you may swap any number of cards beneath George Barnaby with the same number of non-weakness cards in your hand. And his Cast Adrift is Revelation. If there are no cards beneath George Barnaby, shuffle Cast Adrift into your deck. Otherwise, discard each card beneath George Barnaby.
Okay, so I way undervalued the last card, and I'm probably going to swing way too hard in the other direction. This feels like Super Joe Diamond, which I'm currently playing, for those of you who don't know. And I love this.
Yeah.
This is wild to me.
Yeah.
The ability to... So obviously with George Barnaby, I want to play heavily into card draw.
Card draw or discard?
Card draw as well.
Yeah.
Well, I've naturally got discard. So you discard a card from your hand, place it face down beneath George Barnaby, then draw a card. So I've got card draw.
Yeah.
I'm set for card draw.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. I need to trigger a discard. I get it.
Yeah.
But still. But I can already do that by limiting my hand size, by limiting my card pool. So I want to play a bunch of those cheaper free events that are going to commit for great value as skill cards. He's so weird. I love it.
He is very weird. I think he is going to be very strong.
Yeah.
Mostly because his card draw seems insane. Limit once per phase. You can effectively draw 4 cards a turn. People, I think, are slightly forgetting this math. They're in Christmas land. When they see you could draw 4 cards a turn, did you start with 1 card underneath him, right? Because unless you're committing like 1,000,000 cards, I think hitting 4 a turn might be a little bit hard. Like, people look at that. But it is true. You could get 4 a turn. What I really like about George Barnaby... I don't like to talk too much about the investigators until we see the full cycle, because there might be a card we'll be talking about like, oh, but he's missing a card that, like gives him a funny hat. And then like next week they're like, here's the Survivor funny hat card. And we're like, well, now we just look like idiots.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So like, I don't like to talk too much about what they have or what they're missing until we see the full thing. I will say, however, though, George Barnaby ticks a lot of boxes for me. 1, he's a survivor, my favorite class. 2, he is skill based. Even though like you're like he reads discard based, this motherfucker actually is secretly like a Silas Marsh skill slinger type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Number 3, he has my 3 favorite colors. Seeker and Rogue are my 2 like secondary classes. So like he has like I literally feel like this guy was made for me. His signature I think is cool and a good tech tool if you use his ability as kind of not really recursion, because it's not really recursion.
Oh my gods, I also just realized 3 copies of Grim Resolve?
Yes. So his deck size is actually 40. His deck size is huge.
Yeah.
Because he has a lot of draw. I think what will really make him pop is if there is some sort of permanent discard engine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Caster Drift is also pretty fair. I think he's going to be relatively easy to refill. I just think that he might be a little bit touch and go at the beginning for how efficiently you can put things underneath him.
Yeah.
But he's also a survivor, which means that like he's also just like his cards are really good for that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I was thinking event, but I meant skill. Yeah, he's such a good skill card.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just going to load him with skill cards.
Yeah, because like the thing is about skill cards is that they are easy to discard. You don't feel bad, right? And then you can just like, you get the value. So the cost of discarding, this is going to sound obvious to the people who play a lot of card games, but if you don't know, the cost of discarding, like the reward is that you are discarding a card and you're getting paid for it. Like that card you're discarding is making it better. The downside is that card's gone, right? Like, so like, for example, Ashcan Pete, you turn your card into an Investigate with Duke, right? Wendy Adams, you turn your card into redrawing a token. With George Barnaby, you're turning your card into a card, whatever other effects that this card triggered, but then you still get to play that card, right?
Yeah.
And when you're doing that with skills, because the idea is that now you're like, if you do it with an event and then you commit the event, or you do it with an asset and you commit the asset, you're getting half value out of it. When you do it with a skill, you're getting 100% pure value out of it. You're getting like literally like you're squeezing the fucking orange, drinking the juice, and it's just great.
And then you're eating the orange afterwards.
And you're eating the orange, you're like, get out, I'll eat the rind, I don't care. Yeah.
So the wild thing to me too about George Barnaby is, as someone who's often killed by the Mythos deck, this has such an interesting set of interactions with the Mythos deck on any sort of Mythos discard. And a choice between damage or discard,
you discard.
George Barnaby always discards.
Yeah. Yeah. Notably, a few things that I think batch discarding is going to be bad.
Yeah.
Because if you discard 2, you only get 1 back. I think like your goal for George Barnaby is always doing 1 for 1. If you can never do 1 for 1, you're never actually falling behind. So that's something to keep in mind. But I do agree, Mythos phase is easy.
Way easier, at least.
There's also a card called Idol of Xanatos that came out a few sets ago, where you can, when you take damage or horde, you can exhaust up to 3 cards to cancel that much, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which works really well, because then you have another Mythos phase where suddenly those cards that say take a damage are now like, say, just discard a card and draw a card, and then commit it later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think his opening setup is really cool, too, because if you think about it, let's just say you see 5 cards, you put 2 underneath him, play the rest as assets, or like discard 1 and put it underneath him and still get value out of it, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like you're actually going to be putting a lot less underneath him than you think at the start.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and you're going to be playing with really tight hand sizes, I think.
Yes.
I think you're going to honestly be optimizing him for around 2 to 3 cards in hand.
Yeah.
And then just cycling.
And there's been a lot of pieces of a 0-hand survivor archetype, and I think that he's going to be able to capitalize on those, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see like 1 or 2 more in this cycle to take advantage
You're
of.
right. I kind of want to play Dark Horse with him.
Dark Horse, yeah, Dark Horse. And then there is a card that unfortunately you can't take advantage of in like the way that they can, but there is there's a Seeker card that is Empirical Hypothesis, where you get value on it if you have no cards in hand, right? He can't play it because you need to get upgraded for that, but other people might be able to use the tools that he has to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think George Barnaby's really sweet, though. And that's it.
I also love his art.
Oh, yeah.
I love him just standing there being like, this is great.
Yeah. It's also...
And then him being like...
So it's really funny. Every time we play George Barnaby in Eldritch Horror, Bryn always dies in the Arctic Ocean with him on his boat. So it's perfect.
As you must.
That's Bryn. Like, Grim Resolve is Bryn at the start of Eldritch Horror with George Barnaby, and then Cast Adrift is like right before Bryn has to choose a new investigator because George Barnaby is dead.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
Also has that same kind of Brynness in the lawyer art.
Yes. Yeah. The only thing I think is a pretty fair criticism is that I think that the lawyer flavor doesn't really fit with this.
There is no connection to lawyer anywhere in this.
Yeah, I've heard some people he digs through old files and has things stored, and I think that's a cool reach, but I think it ultimately is just a reach. I think this is one of the things where this is mechanic based as opposed to flavor based design, and you know what? Who cares? They can't all be George, so they can't all be Joe Diamonds, which is great as the private eye being I have a hunch, I know what I'm going to do here.
What I might view him as instead, if I was going to go that route, was I would look a little bit more into, does this flavor fit with his story about Maria being killed by cultists? Does this fit more with his idea of I am retired and coming back out of retirement? Because he's retiring cards.
And I mean, I think the answer to that is still probably no. But it is another.
I tried.
Yeah, but I think again, if you. There's players out there, I think they're called Vorthos, it's another player style, that cares about the flavor resonance.
That is normally me on MTG.
Yeah. And sometimes they're going to whiff for you, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they are. But if you can build your own headcanon, again, I think I even think that one, he's pulling out retired information, I think that also can still be a good explanation. But I think that this was supposed to be Hank Sampson. But because
that black piece of tape?
Yes. But because
what happened to him?
he got squished. He's got squished. But because the Feast of Hemlock Vale specifically targets hand size, they decided to not release it with that. So I wish that I think it would have fit better as Hank, just because he's that scrappy farmhand being I pick up thing, put thing down.
Yeah.
But I think that he's mechanically a win. I think he's gonna be a very fun investigator to play.
Yeah, I think so too.
Sweet. All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Eric and I will be back for another one of these, and I also guess I can announce now, I don't know if Fantasy Flight has released the schedule yet. I hear there's some chaos going on there in terms of getting it out there. They're still trying to, but our spoiler is on December 22nd, so we will see you all for that one. We might have an experience card, and we also might have one of the investigators for all of you. Yeah, we might have one of the investigators. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.